Bruins Beat is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. And we're presented by Game Time. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. I'm Evan Marinofsky, joined by Joe Pohoryles. Joe, what is up?
Not much. Just I think reveling in the news from the team that dropped this morning, and the images that came out with the new Centennial game jersey, and yeah, I don't know, looks pretty sweet to me.
I am a sucker for good sweaters. I am. And when you get one wrong, like it hurts. You know, when you got to watch a team out there, the Bruins haven't had many misses. None really come to mind. But when you look at other teams, and I think that is sort of the beauty of if you're the Anaheim Ducks or the San Jose Sharks or Dallas or you know even Florida, you kind of have a little. You can be a little liberal with it. You have a little, you can have some creative freedom, and sometimes that works out great, and sometimes that works out terrible. The Bruins have a defined brand. They've changed the look of their logo over the years. It's always been, black and yellow and all that stuff, but there is a lot to play with, and these are nice. These are nice, and they nailed it with these. So this came out Thursday morning, as you mentioned, and the Celtics kind of leaked these.
Yeah, yeah. At least the patch part. Like I feel like it was kind of like the sneak peek before the sneak peek. It seemed like.
Yeah. Maybe it was coordinated. I don't think it was coordinated. But so we had an idea that these were the ones, or they were at least going to go kind of with that era. I love them. I've wanted them to kind of do an alternate like this for a while. They've had some great alternates over the years. They've had some good Winter Classic ones over the years, and they don't really bring them back. And maybe they will down the road. Maybe they leave us wanting more. All that stuff. These, I think, are clean. They're so nice. I'd love if they were the permanent home unis because, and I like the Bruins jerseys as is. Like, it looks good, but it's kind of been the same since 2007. And not there's anything like wrong with that, but I don't know. I'm all for a little bit of a change. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I think at least for these, I like them better than last year's Centennial home and away jerseys. I think that this one, like more yellow or gold, I think is good with the Bruins and just the whole brand and how it mixes with the black and gold. I mean, that's what their one of their shorthanded nicknames are. So you want to see that featured more in a jersey like that. So yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing it as the normal home jersey. But if they wanted to make that like the third alternate, or maybe it'd have to be a different color other than black to make it like a third jersey, whatever the case may be for that. But something like of that ilk, I think would be good to have in the regular rotation.
I do wonder, like, if they have the third alternate. Last year, the alternate was the clean white ones that wear against original six teams that were phenomenal. Those were awesome. I think of the three they introduced last year, that was my favorite.
100%. Yeah.
These, I wonder if we see them more and more and more, and suddenly either they're the alternate for a while, and this is speculation. This is not like inside info or anything, but I do wonder if by the end of the year or next year, going into next year, it's like, all right, we're going to slot these in as the main ones. And then obviously the ones they currently have will be alternates in like 2050. And you'll be like to your kids, you'll be like, man, I remember when they wore those every game. Like, I wonder if they sort of do what the Penguins did, where they had the current thing and they went back into the, I think, 80s and 90s. And the Bruins kind of doing a similar thing. I wonder if they're kind of going that route.
Well, I think the Hurricanes kind of did that with like their black flag alternate, or they started as alternates, and I think they started to use them as like home jerseys in the playoffs, like one of those years, or maybe it's become like one of their main jerseys, I think. So
yeah,
you could see something like that.
100%. And I could see that in this situation too. And I think like, I'd be curious to hear what fans think. Like, and again, I have nothing against the current home and away setup. This isn't the Ducks, where the home and away jerseys look awful, and they've had them for a long time. These are clean. They won a Stanley Cup in these. They've had a ton of success. When they brought these sweaters in, basically the one they have now, they've been in the playoffs every year, but 2 years since. Like, it's been a great run. I I don't know. I'd just be open to something different. They have a great history. I don't think it's like the Patriots, where like the Patriots switched out of, the ones they had for all of the Brady years. They have these current ones. I do not like the current Patriots uniforms, especially the blues. Like, I think those look awful. But I don't think that would be this, because this is they've had this logo. It's just sort of a more modernized sweater. I like it. I'm all for it. I'm curious to see what it looks like on the ice. We won't really know until we see it in action. So yeah, that's a win. That's a win. Thankfully, I was hoping that the alternate wouldn't be terrible, and we're like, oh man, that's an eyesore to look at. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Speaking of good things, Bruins going to Colorado, start the road trip off on Wednesday night. Late game, almost a 10 p.m. start. I was watching it friggin' in bed by the third period. Bruins win 5-3. Again, Colorado does not look great. They are still winless, but I still look at them as the Avs. They're not very deep, and they were not as nearly as dominant as they were in years past. Still, though, Bruins have some trouble in Colorado, so to me, like, you take it.
Yeah, I mean, was it all their goals on the power play, or something? I think it was at least two of them. So like that's where it got like the most dangerous, obviously, when you got Cale Makar shooting through traffic from the point on one of them. So the fact that they were able to hold them off.
That goal was so nice.
Yeah.
I love that. It was like, that's trademark Cale, just a missile from the point. It was
right.
Awesome.
Yeah. So like those kind of come with the territory when you're facing a team like Colorado, and the fact that the fourth line just keeps on rolling to like an unprecedented degree, or one that not anybody would expect just coming into this year. I don't know how many, if you did a poll of Bruins fans at the start of the year, how many of them would know who Cole Koepke is? And now he's probably one of the fan favorites. Like, so obviously they want to see more from their, from the top six as it keeps going on. The power play came to life, and both units showed some signs, which was nice. But overall, a good first step after, sort of the, call it demoralizing, call it disheartening, whatever you want, the losses to Florida to start the year. The fact they started off the road trip showing signs of life in those categories, it's a good sign going forward.
Yeah, and that fourth line is rolling, and now it's been 5 games, so it's a it's still kind of a small sample size, but it's the whole season right now. And you look at Kastelik and what he brings on the forecheck, and Beecher and the speed he brings, and then Koepke kind of just is so involved down low in cycles and things like that. And to me, like, and obviously you've seen this a lot, like fourth lines change so much throughout a season. And it sometimes it's not until March when you find that right trio, because a good fourth line can get you far. It can be an X factor in the playoffs, whatever their role is. This looks good. And it's funny because I think, you saw going into Wednesday's game, Jim Montgomery take out Morgan Geekie, Justin Brazeau, put in Riley Tufte, and Max Jones. And those are guys who you'd kind of slot in on the fourth line to see what they have. You wouldn't necessarily, especially Tufte, put him up on the third line. Jones, I think has more of a case for it. But you can't break up that fourth line right now because it's going so good. So like, I think that's their problem, is they have a couple guys on level 9 who would essentially slot in on that fourth line. You swap Beecher out for a game, you swap Koepke out, Kastelik, whatever. That line is working, and they're not just working, they're getting results at 5-on-5. Like, I think that's one of the biggest things, is they're so annoying to play against in the offensive zone. And this is what, like, you and I said this a lot, I remember last year, and a lot of people said this during the playoffs. They got to shoot the damn puck sometimes. And I like the idea of going for high danger looks, but sometimes you just got to fire that thing on net. And they do that. They, pucks bounce off of them. I forget what goal it was last night that I think the broadcast thought went off of Beecher in front, or he screened. It was Hampus Lindholm's shot. Beecher screened,
that one.
Screened Georgiev. So like, again, it's just little things like that. And again, are they going to produce like that the whole year? Maybe, but probably not.
Yeah.
But to me, like, that's clearly been your best line through 5 games.
Yeah. I think, and to your point, like even the game before their last home game, where I think Kastelik was credited with the goal at first, but it ended up tipping off Beecher. Like, they changed it up, but like, that's the type of shots they're going for. That's the way they're playing. They're forechecking really well, and you can it's a noticeable difference. Like, even if you're just watching the game casually, like, you can tell when that line's on the ice, they're making things happen in the offensive end. And even if it's not always resulting in a goal, I mean, most of the time it is at this point, but even the defensemen are getting involved, like on their line, whichever, whether it's Lindholm or Lohrei or Peak, anyone on that line with them, they're getting shots on net too. So it's like a trickle down effect for the whole defensive corps as well, it seems.
It is, and they're getting long ozone shifts, which is important. And I haven't looked. I think I saw they're like 8-8. They're outscoring teams 8-0 at 5-on-5.
Yeah.
I saw last night on Twitter. So like, again, they continue to just do well. And I think like, at the beginning of the year, obviously nobody called that line being their best line through the first 5 games. But I do think that line has sort of the makings of a good playoff line. I said this earlier in the week. Like, they are sort of how you want to play the Florida Panthers. They play a Panthers style of game. They're hard on the forecheck. They're very physical. They might not be the most skilled, although the Panthers do have quite a bit of skill. But they have it. They have that little drive that comes up huge in the playoffs every year. Are they going to be a shutdown line? Probably not. I think that's kind of shaping up to be more of Coyle's line, which we'll get to in a second. But in terms of a line that just kind of creates havoc, wears guys down, you have it, Matt. Now, is that going to last the rest of the year? I don't know. My guess is we're still going to see some different variations of that fourth line. Injuries obviously happen. But so far, I mean, again, Cole Koepke, what a find. Kastelik, a very underrated part of that trade for Linus Ullmark. And I think, everybody harps on, Johnny Beecher's a first round pick, blah, blah, blah. He's still an every night NHLer. Like, he's got a lot of speed. He can produce, great penalty killer, good on draws. Like, again, you picked him, I think, at like 30 or 29 back in 2019. Yeah. So like, it wasn't like, it wasn't first overall. Right. So again, I get the idea of, some other guys were picked after who, higher end, but still he's given you something a lot last year and he's given you a lot to start this year. So fourth line, good. We'll get into some more good because, again, vibes are high after the Bruins took down the Avs. But first, quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. It's hard not to pick more receiving yards for Justin Jefferson or more passing yards for Josh Allen. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Now, back to the show. So another bright spot I thought was pretty clear on Wednesday night was Charlie Coyle. I thought Coyle had a great game. Obviously scores a goal, and I think that was big for him. He got demoted to that third line against Florida on Monday. I think it was important he had a good game. He did have a good game. I thought that line had some good ozone sequences. What do you think of Coyle on Wednesday?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much covered it. Like, just seeing him get back to what he can do, because he's such a maybe not underrated anymore, but such a valuable player in all facets.
I still think he's a little underrated because I think people forget that he had, I think, 60 points last year.
Yeah.
And he plays a phenomenal two-way game. I think people kind of just think, he's a third line center. And it's like, no, I think he actually could be a pretty good number 2 center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they use him on the power play. He's on the penalty kill, and the fact that he was showing up in all those ends and at 5-on-5 as well. I think that's sort of the thing. Obviously, going back to the fourth line a little bit, everyone's talking about them. It's like, what about the rest of the team? Well, honestly, it's so early in the season that you're going to expect players like Pastrnak, Zacha, and Coyle, just what he brings, to get to that level or get to their usual level as the season goes on. So the fact that the fourth line's already kicking, and now we're starting to see some players get back up to the season form, that's just an encouraging sign for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I think, there have been questions, I think, after especially Monday's game where it's like, all right, is Coyle the best guy for that second line center spot, or would, maybe moving Matt Patra up, would that be better? Because again, that second line, I think offensively, they move Frederick in. The second line offensively has not been super potent through the first 4 games. And I think that's going to be sort of an issue where it's like, you have Brad Marchand there, historically has been a big producer for you guys. And I've said it kind of all off season and preseason, like, he's 30, Marchand's 36. He's still a phenomenal player, but I don't think you can expect, point per game levels out of him right now. And if he is just sort of a guy that, gives you 60 something points, good in his own zone, plays hard in the off, a lot of long ozone sequences, you take that every time. But is Coyle the guy to get that out of him? And who's going to be on that right side? And I think Frederick's a solid kind of stopgap on that right side. I still think they're going to need someone at some point. And I think that, they understand that, where it's like, all right, come the deadline. I think when you and I are doing these in February, I think we're going to be, looking around the league going, all right, who are the bad teams with like a 20 goal scorer who's like 31 to play on that second line right wing? Because I think that that's still going to be a need. Patra's interesting because I like Patra down the middle better, but I would be intrigued at him on the right side of that line. The only thing is, like, he's getting crunched out there. I mean, holy crap.
Yeah. I think at a certain point they're gonna have to put him there, whether it's middle of the game or if they're use him for a whole game there just to see what he can bring. I think Jim Montgomery, he changes his lines like the drop of the hat, looking at the last 2 seasons. So we're probably going to see that. We're probably going to see different variations of that. But you have to, find what if he can work there. And I think obviously they used him there in the preseason. He looked good there as well. Less defensive responsibility, focusing more on his offensive game. And if that's what they need from that right wing spot, if he can hold his own physically and show that more of that offensive upside and ability, then it's definitely worth a look.
Yeah, and I also, again, like, I think he brings an offensive ceiling that Frederick doesn't quite have. And again, I still think Frederick is better suited on the third line. Like, come the playoffs, I think you want him on that third line as a guy that can give you an advantage. Morgan Geekie obviously was scratched on Wednesday night. Again, he was sort of the first guy they tried on that second line right spot. So to me, like, Patra, there's a lot of offensive potential there. Obviously, I think he makes more sense down the middle going forward. You want to develop him as a center, a potential top 6 guy for you down the road. But if you have to use him at second line to get that line going at 5-on-5, I think you have to entertain it. I mean, again, we saw at the beginning of training camp, Patra started on that on the wing. So I think that line, I mean, again, if they can get that Coyle line going offensively at all, I think it completely changes their outlook. And again, they've shown in the past that they can do that. So it's no surprise if they end up finally friggin' flipping the switch. And if they don't, then it's a big problem because then that's a real problem if that line doesn't get going. I want to get into sort of some of Montgomery's lineup switches going into Wednesday's game, what we thought of them. But first, quick word from our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like watching an NBA or NHL game live. The energy in the building, the sounds on the ice or the court, the memories you make with family, friends, and other fans. It's unmatched. And the coolest part is when strangers sitting around you become your best friends. You can make these memories with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. When I use Game Time, I also love the flash deals, which help me get discounted prices on really good seats. Plus, who doesn't love seat views, which give a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy? So, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Now, back to the show. So a lot of people were very surprised going into Wednesday's game when Jim Montgomery came out prior to the game and said Geeky and Brazeau out, Riley Tufte and Max Jones in, and they were going to play with Matt Poitras. I think a lot of people were like, ugh. And by a lot of people, I mean, I know I was. Like, what are they doing? And again, I think it goes back to, like, you can't switch up that fourth line, because if Tufte's coming in, you would normally put him on line 4, but it's worked so well. Tufte took 2 penalties. I think they were both in the offensive zone. They both led to goals. My guess is he is not playing Saturday. And I think Kiki probably slots back in. Jones, I didn't notice a heck of a lot of. I didn't see any, like, I know that he missed a lot of training camp, so it's hard to tell the guy, you gotta, you're gonna play every 5 games, get ready for the season. But I don't know if I would have pulled the plug on Brazeau going into Colorado. Like, I still like what he could potentially bring you, that offensive potential, front of the net stuff. So what do you think how do you think they end up managing this?
Yeah, I think I agree with Tufte. Just after that game, I don't think he's going to be in the lineup much, anytime soon. I mean, maybe if they feel like they want to play around with things again. Jones, yeah, and I agree with what you said there as well. I feel like he's got NHL experience, but he's a bit of like an unknown with how he fits with the rest of the team. So I feel like they will give him another shot, maybe sometime soon, even if it's not the next game. They want to play around with it a little bit. I think Brazeau and Geeky, for that matter, should go back into the lineup, at least, for a game or two and beyond, and get themselves better looks. But yeah, I think Jones, I think he deserves more of that opportunity, or at least to show what he can do, because, they brought him in. He didn't really have that opportunity in training camps. I mean, maybe deserves isn't the right word, but it just sort of, I think it's worth taking a closer look at him as well.
100%. I think he does. I think he does deserve to get a legitimate look. It just comes down to where, and I think it's that third line. That third line probably is where you're looking at him as, that left wing on that line. Tufte, I don't really see it. I don't. And again, it just goes back to that fourth line is solid. Like, typically in a beginning of a season, you'd be rotating that bottom 6 around, seeing what works. That fourth line immediately clicked. So there's not much you can do in terms of getting guys in and out. I think they do have to get Morgan Geeky going. I think they're just like Frederick on the third line. I think they're a much better team with Geeky on that third line. Again, they had him as that number 1 center, and he's a good replacement guy in that top 6. But to me, like, I just think he is at his best on that third line. You start to kind of play with matchups and you exploit them, and I think he shines the most in that. So they have to get Geeky going. That's a definite. Korpisalo played pretty well. The broadcast kind of called him out for, I think it was the 3rd Avalanche goal. I think it was like a one-timer on the power play. Other than that, I didn't think he was bad. He made some big saves. Definitely a nice bounce back for him. What a start to the year. Start in Florida and Colorado. So to me, like, I thought Korpisalo was good. He was fine. What do you think?
Yeah. I think obviously the shot count was pretty low for most of the game until Colorado started to fight things back a little bit. So maybe if you look at those numbers, it's like, he let in two goals on 9 shots at one point, I think, in the game. So obviously that part doesn't look good. But if obviously if they're not giving you much, you kind of have to go with what you work with. So I think on the surface, maybe didn't look as good, but after the first game and after the concerns coming into the season, obviously I think the 3rd goal he probably would want back out of the ones that he let through. But overall, with what he was left to face, definitely could have been worse. I think he showed that there's room for improvement for him, and he's willing to take the steps to improve. So that definitely not the most concerning thing with the team right now.
No, and again, if you can just get him to come in every 3 games, every 4 games, and just be solid, like, that's really just what you need out of him. I'm not a good enough goalie expert to be like, this is what he's changed from the Colorado game to the Florida game. But I do think that it was encouraging. Again, not the busiest night. Typically, you would think going into Colorado, because when he was announced as the starter and you're in Colorado, it's like, all right, well, is going to be a high scoring game. Korpisalo versus Georgiev, like, there's going to be a lot of goals. Hit the over on the goal number. But again, I thought he was fine. He did enough to win. One other play I loved, Mason Lowry. I think offensively just continues to look really good. Had a brutal first game against Florida, but to me, since like, that pass to, I think, was it to Pasternak on the OT winner against the Kings? He had that nice goal against Florida on Monday. He had a really nice assist again on Wednesday. Like, he's kind of silently putting up pretty good numbers through the first 5 games. I'm very curious to see what that point total is at the end of the year. Because Fluto wrote, I think it was Fluto who wrote on like his preseason predictions that Lowry ends up at some point signing like a 6x6 contract, which would be pretty substantial.
Yeah.
But like, I think that'd be smart by the Bruins, at least going off what we've seen so far. But I think offensively, I'm curious to see what those numbers end up being at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, he started to really break out, if you want to call it that, in the playoffs last year, and I think the fact that it's carried over so early in this season, where I feel like for most of last year, the different parts, at least the left side of the defense, was always a bit of a question mark, and Hampus Lindholm, regressed in terms of point production total. Obviously, it looks like he's on pace to get back to those numbers 2 years ago with how he's playing with the puck. So the fact that Lowry's jumping in offensively too. Zadorov's, hasn't been the greatest start, but he's still, mixing it up with other, he's bringing his size and force and fighting with other players occasionally. It's definitely stuff to like from that.
Yeah, and I think, like, I've noticed, obviously the points support it, but I think they've also, on D, just been more offensive in these first 5 games. They've been more willing to jump up, very active at the point. I mean, again, Lowry leads the defense in points, 1 goal, 3 assists. Lindholm, 1 goal, 2 assists. Zadorov, 3 assists. Carlo, 1 goal, 2 assists. McAvoy, 2 goals, 1 assist. Peak, 2 assists. Like, they are very, very, they've been very active. And a lot of those aren't just like secondary assists either. Like, they're making plays happen. So again, we harped on it a lot after game 1, and sort of their front of the net coverage hasn't been amazing. But, like a guy like Lowry, I think when the year ends, if he's at 40 something points and he's a -4, like, I think you probably take that. Like, you do take that trade off. I think that is someone that you expect that from. So, if there's a little more offense, then I guess you just take it. Joe, what can the people look forward to from you at NHL.com and everywhere you're writing?
Yeah, still doing like Bruins coverage, a lot of game day stuff, maybe occasional features from there, and then also working on some stuff for the New England Hockey Journal. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, Evan, but I've got some stuff coming.
What do they do?
There, so, yeah,
that'll be place.
Yeah, that'll be fun to once I've working on some stuff now, working on a couple features, so excited for that.
We've got you going. It's go subscribe. I'm kidding, it's not stupid. It's a very nice place. Anyways, Joe, always a pleasure. That's Joe Pohoryles. I'm Evan Marinofsky, Bruins Beat listeners. Have a great rest of your week.